Since it's been a while that I don't make a top 10 in this channel, I decided to make one about the best horror movie sequels, not only in my opinion, but the ones I think that should be remembered. Obviously, a top 10 like this would end up with the number one movie in my opinion being my favorite movie of all time, Aliens from James Cameron. But since I always talk about this movie here in the channel, I'm going to exclude it from this list and talk about other movies that we don't talk so much here. Again, these are not the best sequels of all time like some lists say, but sequels that stuck with me for some reason, and I would like to talk a little about them. And without further ado, let me give you a quick message before we go to the top 10. And if you love trashiness, old movies, cartoons, animes, more than any other person that I consider normal in this life, don't forget to subscribe to this channel right now, cause the Trashing with Gus is your house. And the number 10 goes to Damian the Omen 2, movie from 1978 that is a sequel to the classic directed by Richard Donner, The Omen. And here we have a basic continuation of the story of Damian Thorne, the boy that is the reincarnation of the Antichrist on Earth. And the focus of this movie is in the teenage years of the boy while he is in a military school, while the first movie was more like a mystery story with Damian's father uncovering the mystery of his son. Here we have a movie that focuses more on his character, discovering his roots as the devil himself. And I like these scenes because the actor who plays Damian is quite good in the movie. You have an arc of a character that discovers himself as the Antichrist, and this is a great shock to him. After all, it's not easy to find out that you are Lucifer himself. But the interesting thing is that after that, he starts to accept his legacy and become the villain he's supposed to be. Something like turning to the dark side of the Force. It's very well done and very well developed, so it deserves to be in this list. Now at number 9, 10 Cloverfield Lane, movie that is the second story in the anthology of movies from the Cloverfield series. The first movie directed by Matt Reeves is the one with the big monster in the city, and it's seen by the point of view of the people in New York. Here we have a completely different story with the character of the actress Mary Elizabeth Winstead having a car crash and being taken to a bunker of a mysterious man played by John Goodman. There is another guy living with them in the bunker as well, and the John Goodman's character tries to convince Mary Elizabeth Winstead's character that she can't leave the bunker because there is a virus out there that is killing everyone, and if she leaves, she will be contaminated. But she doesn't believe him because, like I said, he's a very suspicious fella. And the fun thing about this story is that after the first big reveal, given the context of what's really happening in this movie, the plot throws these characters in unusual directions, playing with the audience's expectations about how their dynamic will be living in this bunker together. And this is very fun. Especially the relationship between these characters, building attention with the fact if they really can trust each other. That is, this sequel has basically zero connection with the first movie. I remember that when the movie was released, people were speculating what was the great connection with Cloverfield from 2008, and when the movie came out, it was quite clear that it was just another story in an anthology series. The only thing that kinda ruins the movie but not is the ending, that I can see the dirty hands of the producer J.J. Abrams desiring a big CGI heavy ending that has nothing to do with the whole tension that the movie was building and is quite inferior to the whole thing. I won't tell you what the ending is, but even though with this problem, the movie is still very good and great fun. And the number 8 is, let's start talk about trash with our iconic slashers. With Friday the 13th Part 6, Jason Lives. Yes, this list is not essentially based on the second chapter of a series. It can't be a sequel that is a few chapters later. And I basically love all sequels from the Friday the 13th franchise. Number 2 is great, number 3 is pretty good, number 4 is fantastic, number 5 is so-so, and I definitely love 6, that is pure comical trash fun. Here is where the series goes straight to the comedy, but with a lot of charisma as well. You have Jason being resurrected as a real zombie this time. You have a great battle with his arch nemesis in the series, that is the character Tommy Jarvis. The characters in the movie have good lines and are kind of fun. The main girl in the movie, that is the love interest of Tommy Jarvis, Megan, is quite charismatic and probably my favorite final girl in the series. And like I said, this movie is pure comedy trash. You have a James Bond-style intro with Jason cutting the screen. We have Jason decapitating 3 people at the same time. We have Jason pushing a guy's face into a trunk of a tree, leaving the mark of a bloody smiley face. But the movie also has some gothic horror elements spread around it that links back to the old classic horror movies of monsters, and I love this idea. And the number 7 goes to Hellbound Hellraiser 2. Here we have a sequel of the story in the first movie, bringing back the main character Kristen, but now she is a little crazy for the events that happened in that story. You also have the return of some characters from that movie, and especially the Lament configuration, the box that opens the portals to our dear Cenobites, the demons of the pleasure and the pain. I really like this movie and the third one as well, that is Hellraiser Hell on Earth, but after the 4th movie the quality of the series started to decrease a lot until the remake. But here we still have the sinister tone of the first movie, and a greater focus on the Pinhead character. And it probably has the coolest Cenobite in terms of visual, at least in my opinion, that is the Dr. Philip. And besides that, we understand a little more about the story behind the Cenobites, with a bigger focus on the others too. By the way, it is only me, or am I the only one who thinks this female Cenobite is quite attractive? I know I'm a weirdo, but whatever. And the number 6 goes to Psycho 2, a sequel that very few people remember. Everybody remembers the great Alfred Hitchcock classic, the first Psycho, of course, especially because of the shower scene. But Psycho 2 is very interesting and unusual because of the quality of the story. The plot starts years after the first movie, when Norman Bates is released from prison after having served his full sentence. And even though he is back to society, things start to get complicated again after new murders start to happen around him, bringing obvious suspicions on the former Psycho. And the movie plays with the audience with the idea of, are these murders being committed by Norman himself again, or there is someone else trying to incriminate him? And this question keeps hammering our minds because of the excellent performance of Anthony Perkins as Norman Bates again. His sense of innocence and politeness, combined with a great deal of vulnerability, makes us feel for the guy, like we cannot help but to be a little on his side, even though we know his past. So the movie is great because of this mystery that plays with our expectations. Now, if the movie is better than the first one, I don't know, but I think it's a great company if you watch them both, one after the other. And the number 5 goes to Critters 2. And then we come back to our delicious trashiness. Critters 1 is about these furry ball aliens that devour meat and release thorns that have a toxin that leave their prey numb for many minutes. And they are also criminals that escaped from a ship in space, and another race of aliens comes to Earth to hunt them down. And these ones are shapeshifters, which means that they take the form of humans and get mixed within the public. The problem is that in this attempt to get mixed with humans, they cause a lot of trouble and there are many comedic moments. And the movie itself was very funny. The protagonists of the story were the family of this boy named Brad. And by the end of it, the space hunters were able to kinda destroy all the critters, although they left some eggs for a future sequel. Then in the sequel, we have these eggs multiplying and getting mixed with Eastern chocolate eggs. They are even painted with the color of these kind of eggs. But then they start to hatch, and the critters come back, bringing a lot of destruction to the city and its citizens. The only character that returns from the previous movie is the boy Brad, but now he's bigger, and he also has a girlfriend now. We also have the return of the space hunters, and we have a great expansion of the story with the whole city having to gather to fight back the critters. And then we have amazing and memorable scenes, including one with the critter ball. Exactly, they come together and join themselves to become a big ball that if they pass over anybody, they devour their meat. It's wonderful. I still haven't watched the Critters 3 and 4 that exist. By the way, in Critters 3 we have a young Leonardo DiCaprio, but here is the recommendation to watch Critters 2. But don't forget to watch Critters 1 before. Again, watching them together is just pure trash fun. And before we continue this list, please consider to subscribe to my Patreon page. In there you can support the channel, and if you are liking my videos, you know that the channel still needs to grow and develop, so I ask for your kind help with that. Depending on the category of the support that you choose, you will receive my videos 2 weeks earlier than everybody else, and also receive a free copy of my new ebook, The Angel of Fire and Steel, an epic dark fantasy that mixtures cyberpunk, sci-fi, and a lot of action. I will leave the link of the Patreon page right here on the description of this video. Thank you so much, and let's continue with the list. And the number 4 goes to, we could not have included him in this list, right? Our dear Freddy Krueger with Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, Freddy's Revenge. And this movie has many layers of interesting things, but I won't lie, it is a big mess. There are many elements that don't make any sense and are very out of context, but there are some other elements that are very good and very memorable in my opinion. Like the first scene in the movie that is a nightmare scene that I think is probably my favorite nightmare scene on the whole franchise. We have the main character of the movie, Jesse, in a school bus returning to his home, and he is kinda isolated, a little strange, and after many of the students are left in their homes, only him and 2 other random girls are left in the vehicle. But then the driver passes by one of the stops in one of the girls' house and starts to speed up down the street while the girl starts to shout, "Driver, that was my stop! Driver, that was my stop!" But he doesn't listen and goes straight into a deserted area that soon becomes dark and then becomes a version of hell. Then it is revealed that the driver is actually Freddy Krueger, and Jesse and the girls are now trapped inside the bus, with Freddy slowly coming towards them to attack. It's the worst kind of nightmare because it kinda looks exactly like the nightmares that I have sometimes. Trapped in a small place with some random people that I don't know, and a threat coming towards me. So it's a great scene. And the plot of the story is that Freddy wants to return to reality using Jesse's body by possessing him in the dreams. And that takes us to an amazing scene where Freddy comes out of Jesse's body, a scene created using practical effects and having a lot of body horror. It's wonderful. Another great scene is when Freddy attacks a party of kids in the pool area of the house of the main girl in the movie, and he really strikes these kids with no hesitation, clawing them mercilessly. He is filled with rage like a beast out of the leash. And one of the funniest parts of this scene is when a kid of the party tries to reason with Freddy, and Freddy looks at him like, "What the hell is that?" And he answers him in the best way possible. "Help yourself, fucker." By the way, Freddy has some of the best lines of the franchise in this movie, like, "You're all my children now." And his makeup in this movie is the best one in the whole franchise. His skin is kinda wet and burns at the same time, which makes his injuries a little more realistic and a little more gruesome to look at, besides being demonic at the same time. And I love most of the other movies in the franchise as well, like Nightmare on Elm Street 3, The Dream Warriors, or Nightmare 4, The Dream Master. But I wanted to talk about this movie because of its bizarre, at the same time bold elements. And I know all the homosexual tones to this movie that were a little polemic at the time, but honestly, I don't care, and I don't think it plays a big deal into the story. But if you want to take that tone into consideration, it actually makes the whole thing a little more interesting, in fact, creating a new layer to the whole thing. And the number 3 goes to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2, movie that takes the series straight to the comedy, just like Friday the 13th Part 6. For those who remember, the first Texas Chainsaw Massacre had a raw, pure, and visceral tone, and even a kind of documentary element to it as well. A movie that was dirty, and the horror elements came more from the psychological idea of the situation itself than blood and gore. But here we have a great twist. Everything is the contrary. It's big, it's gore, it's funny, and there's even a kind of twisted sensibility to it that is quite unusual. The funny thing is that this sequel is also directed by Tobe Hooper, the same director of the first movie, that really wanted to do something different with this one. And I think that at the time, for those who were fans of the first movie, they must have been kind of disappointed and confused by this sequel. I think I would if I were in their position. But after the sequels that the franchise has had so far, some of them quite horrible in my opinion, the idea of this movie is much more accepted today, bringing a kind of cult status to it. Here we have our dear Leatherface chasing a radio host that caught one of his attacks on the radio when one of the listeners called the station. But the interesting thing is that he falls in love to this radio host, wanting to protect her from his own family. That's so cute. And we cannot forget about the other iconic character in this movie, that is Chop Top. I even mentioned him in my last video about the movie Near Dark. He is sensational. He's a bizarre fella that you cannot take your eyes off him, although he is quite uncomfortable to look at. He has a metal plating on his head, a whitish skin, big nails, rotten teeth, and his voice is fantastic. Music is my life. And like the other members in the Sawyer family, he is a degenerate, but very funny as well. All thanks to the amazing performance of the actor Bill Moseley, that was a beginner at the time. Another interesting thing is that we have the actor Dennis Hopper playing a cop in this movie that is the uncle of Sally and Franklin Hardesty from the first movie, and now is searching for revenge after the Sawyer family. To the point that he faces Leatherface, no pun intended, and fights with him using the chainsaws almost like two knights using swords. And the family Sawyer kinda profited a lot from the first movie to this one, because they left their poor and rotten house to live on the tunnels of an abandoned circus. And when I mean tunnels, I mean huge tunnels down to the subterranean, filled with a lot of memorabilia they collected from the years. If you haven't watched it yet, it's a classic. And just so I don't forget, besides the first one and the second one, I also like some other movies in the franchise, like the remake from 2003, starred by Jessica Biel, that is quite fun and filled with tension, and a lot of great visuals, if you know what I mean by this image. And I know many people hate it, but I kinda loved the new reboot that Netflix made some years ago. It was 1 hour and 10 minutes of length, which is a miracle these days, of pure fun, trash, and inconsequential gore. Just pure fun time. Now let's go to the number 2, and it's none other than our favorite killer doll, Chucky, in Child's Play 2. Child's Play 1 is an undeniable classic, fun, unforgettable, beautiful, everything we wanted. But Child's Play 2 elevates the idea of the first one and brings a lot more fun to the franchise in my opinion. Here the movie doesn't have to worry about keeping Chucky in mystery like the first half of the first movie. So the story can focus a lot more on him and his evil plans to screw with Andy's life, the same protagonist of the first movie, that now is being adopted by a new family, and in their house they have a good guy doll just like Chucky. So when the real Chucky resurrects, he takes the place of this doll and starts to destroy Andy's life little by little, taking revenge on him. He does that by killing a lot of people around the boy and incriminating him for his crimes. So Andy starts to get isolated more and more, and the only person he can count to ask for help is the other adopted daughter from the couple that adopted him, a character named Kyle. By the way, I have to admit that I had a little crush on the actress that played her. Anyway, here Chucky is more furious, more threatening, and more fun because we already know him a little. And the ending of this movie, the great climax, is the best one in the whole franchise because it ends on the factory that produces the good guy dolls. And there all hell breaks loose because Chucky is messed up in all possible ways until his eventual destruction, and it's quite satisfactory for us, the audience, to watch that. And I will tell you a curiosity, a trivia that many people might not know. The movie's writer, Don Mancini, told once that his intention with the climax of this movie taking place in the Good Guy Factory was that this event would lead up to the third movie by creating a plot where we would have multiple Chuckies attacking in this next story, probably with the evil spirit of the doll spreading in the factory and possessing the other dolls. Why this fantastic idea was scrapped, I don't know, but it would be an epic event for a third and final chapter in this trilogy. Anyway, Don Mancini was able to use this idea in the seventh movie of the franchise, The Cult of Chucky, and also in the TV show Chucky, so he got to do his idea in the end. And now to the trophy and the number one. There's no other movie that can define trashness and fun at the same time than Evil Dead 2. I would like to go deeper into this movie in an eventual video in the future, talking more about my love for this sequel, and I don't think this will make justice to all the details and fantastic elements that this movie brings and makes it the greatest classic of horror movies. What I can say is that it's a great epic in terms of everything that I love in a trash movie, besides the trashness, the gore, the horror, the comedy, the fun, the visual effects that are innovative, creative, and use it in many different ways. We have the main character Ash embracing the madness and becoming a badass for the first time in the franchise, killing demons in the best, gory, and stylish ways. It's fantastic, it's unique, and nothing can be more fair than placing him with the golden medal and the trophy of this list. And there are many other sequels that I could talk about that I love as well, but these are basically the ones that I wanted to comment in my channel, so it was worth it to do this list. Remember, it's not a definitive list, so we as spectators expect movies to bring us more and more amazing sequels in the future. What about you? What other horror movie sequels do you remember and think it is worth to put on a top 10 list? Try to make a top 10 list by yourself as well, and comment below. I always love to receive your commentaries and know your opinions about other horror movie sequels that I might have forgotten to put on this list, and it's worth the mention. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so we can continue to trash together, and so I can continue this project of bringing more and more pure trashness to our lives. Also, don't forget to check the link of my new ebook on the site of Amazon, The Angel of Fire and Steel. I will leave the link of it right down here in the description. It's a great, dark, epic adventure that takes place in a universe between angels and demons. And if you love this kind of story, I know you will love this book. And this is it for now. See you in the next Trashing with Gus, and bye-bye.